Hello, 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 hello. Hi, happy Sunday. Welcome to Mama Meditations only on YouTube because we are no longer on other platforms. My name is Coach Yolanda. I'm an international spiritual life coach. I hope that you can hear me well. Those of you watching live, those of you watching the replay, no matter how you are joining and watching, I appreciate you. I am thankful for you. And I am excited for today. Today is Grandparents' Day here in the US. I don't know if it's worldwide just yet, these, as they call them, Hallmark holidays, but I'll gladly take this one. Happy Grandparents' Day to all of those who are living that experience, and what an experience to live. I am grateful for my grandbaby girl and any more that choose to come into existence in this lifetime so that I may enjoy them, spoil them, love upon them, and learn from them. Grandbaby girl has certainly taught me a lot in her young 4 years on earth, and I'm grateful to continue learning more about her and learning more about myself and the type of parent that I'm able to be now that I may not have been able to be when her mother was her age. And so I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for today's topic. It is, hey, I'm going to get to you in a minute. It is about connection and emphasis on the co, because oftentimes when we think about connection, we only think about ourselves, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Hey there, my love. How are you? Hope that all is well in Detroit. um, I am grateful for the connections that I've made through this space and throughout my lifetime. Just this morning, trying to make arrangements with my good girlfriends. You know, those girlfriends, those friends that you've known for quite some time. Well, I have a girlfriend group that I've known well over 40 years. And getting together is not as easy as it used to be, but when you are committed to sustaining relationships, it is required. And that's part of what I would like to talk about today as we are reviewing and talking about um, connection and power, empowering ourselves and empowering one another. And connection is so important when you are creating a more powerful way of living. I don't think that we always think about that. You know, for those of us who are on a healing journey, we often think that that's a lonely journey, that that's an isolating journey, that it's something that we have to do for ourselves, and it doesn't really involve other people. And I would like for us to explore that today. Um, there are so many connections that I have made in my life that I did not appreciate when I was in the middle of the interaction, when we, were doing what humans do, that I now appreciate in a different way and wish that I had an opportunity to not necessarily relive, but even thank the other party. And not all of those connections were positive. Some of them were negative connections that I've learned some of my greatest lessons. And if I thought the other party was going to be able to receive it in that way, I would say thank you. Thank you for the lessons learned. Thank you for the growth that I experienced because of my interactions with you. It's not necessary to do that with people unless you feel that the other party is going to be able to receive it in the way that it's sent. But you can certainly do that for yourself without involving everyone you've had a connection with. Um, I also recognize and fully confess to having challenges with connection. And we'll talk about that. For those of us who are severely independent, connecting with other people sometimes comes with conditions, sometimes comes by force. You know, for those of us who love to do things by ourselves, and then we find ourselves in situations where you're like, I don't have any other choice but to ask for support, it sometimes feels like the connection can be forced. And I find myself in that group. Um, in this space, I can say that I have welcomed connection, but I haven't always been respectful of it. And so I'm grateful for those of you who continue to support me, even when the connection may not be what you bargained for, expected, or anticipated. I can tell you, I have been more shocked than I even realized I would be with the amount of love. Like, I'm always up for love, but I'm not always anticipating that it's going to be provided. And so when it is, it blows me away. No matter what the gesture is, it could be a kind word, it could be it could be just y'all showing up on a Sunday when there are so many other things that you could be doing. And so last Sunday, um, there was a knock on the door. There was a ring on the bell, and my daughter walks out because I was outside catching some sun on the patio on my deck. And my daughter comes out with this box and has my name on it. And I said, I didn't order anything because I'm typically ordering a lot. And I'm like, I didn't order anything. That's not mine. But my name is on the box. I opened the box to find these two beautiful journals by none other than Natural Ally D, this lovely individual right here. Now, we had a conversation. She was like, I'm going to send you something, but I had no idea that it was going to be something near and dear to my heart. And I also will admit that I sometimes have challenges with receiving gifts. If I, if you've ever heard of the five love languages, and then there's different categories, receiving gifts is not one of my love languages. So when I do, it's not only unexpected, but I don't always know how to receive it. So I am so grateful, not just because I received something from you, but because they are journals. And when I receive journals from individuals, it's almost as if someone is saying, I know that this is a spiritual practice that you like to engage in, and I want to help you with it. I can't ever, ever, ever have enough journals, enough places to write. So thank you, my dear. And I just want to highlight the fact that it says for myself, because how often do we journal and other people show up in our journaling? Other people and what they're going through and what we, are witnessing show up in our journal. But this one is entitled For Myself, and it has prompts. It has prompts for every day or every moment that you choose to journal, because how you journal is your business. It doesn't have to be once a day, it could be whenever you feel inspired. And this one is blank, which I also love, but it does also have a prompt. Today I am. And if you know what I am can be two of the most powerful words you put together, because whatever comes after it becomes a testament to who you believe yourself to be. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a surprise. It really was a surprise. And of course, I have to let everybody know, if it's something that's in your heart to gift to someone else, this is where you can purchase. Nope, I did not spell that right. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. I'm looking at it now. I did not spell it right. Spread shop. There we go. All right. Now, this is where you can purchase that. Natural Ally D, myspreadshot.com is where you can get these two and more and other lovely things. The t-shirt about the big ass can be found there, and so much more. Thank you so, so much. It was so touching. All right, listen. She said it's also on Amazon under her pen name. Our good sis has a pen name, which means she's serious about what she does. So let's support her in that. Okay, the spread shop is her t-shirts shop. In order to purchase the journals, that is where you purchase the journals on Amazon. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was, again, something that I had to get used to. I have to get used to. And it's not as if I don't ever receive gifts because I do. I absolutely do. But it's not something that I ever expect, nor is it ever a request. So it blows me away every single time, and I'm so grateful for it. And that's what connection is. Connection can mean a lot of different things, but what are you attracted to? What are you living with? What is living with inside of you? What are you who and how are you supported? You know, when we say we want connection, we have to define for ourselves what that means, because the co part means whatever you're connected to, you're working with. And we may not always be mindful of that. We may not recognize that if I say I'm connected to particular people, then whatever those people are engaged in, somehow I'm either supporting, either because I'm involved in what they're doing, or I have influence in their lives, or maybe you're connected to people and you don't particularly say any particular thing about what it is that they're doing, but you haven't let your feelings be known. And I know I'm guilty of that. I know that I have friends and family members and they're doing things and I stay silent. I may not, share what my thoughts are unless they ask, because if you ask me, I'm going to tell you. But we have to be mindful of what we are connected to and the connections that we have, because it impacts us. If you are in relationship with someone and they are participating in activities that are concerning, it makes you worry. It can create fear. And if you are creating a more powerful life and you can't figure out why you're not feeling powerful, it could be, as we stated in the beginning of this year, that your power is going in places and spaces that require you not to show up as you truly are. And certainly, if you are in relationship with people, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's the people you work with, how many of us have these working relationships where we feel like we have to be somebody else when we're there because we're not really connected to anyone in that space? They don't really know the real us. This morning, as I was preparing for today, I was sitting outside in my hammock and I was thinking about, this group of women that I've known since I was a young girl, and how we love one another, how we get together with one another. But if I have to be honest, if I asked any one of these ladies, and there's about 7 or 8 of them, if I asked any single one of them one intimate thing about me, they may not be able to answer. Because although I form relationships with people and I make connections, when it comes to deep intimacy, it has always been a challenge for me. Every romantic relationship I've ever been in, every single man has said the same thing: I don't really know you. And so, for those of us who are severely independent, connection can be challenging. I have been having experiences as of late where people are attempting to connect with me and I'm confused by it. Hi, honey. Hi, honey. I've been confused by it. Why do you want to connect with me? What is it about me? And when you are questioning your own power, it will have you questioning other people's motives. And so I'm grateful for my good sis who sent me these journals. But I have to be honest that afterwards I was processing, like, well, why would she send that to me? And what does this mean? Am I required to do something? Because I always want to be mindful that I reciprocate the love that I receive. What we do here on Sundays is a very loving act to me. And I do that without, conditions, or without thinking about how is it going to be perceived? Are they going to like it? I just allow the love that is within me to come out in various topics and various ways. But when it comes to intimate relationships, it can be challenging. I really have to put more thought into it. And I can say over this past year, my intimate relationships have struggled because I've struggled with connection. And so I want to read something from one of the books that has been very helpful to me in terms of my challenge with intimacy. And it is entitled The Spirit of Intimacy: Ancient African Teachings and the Ways of Relationships by Sobonafu Some. She has transitioned along with her now husband. If you remember one of the other books that I love, that is near and dear to me, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, written by Malidoma Patrice Some. They were in this life married, and this is one of the books that Sister Some has written. And one of the things that I love about both of these books is the running theme, the consistent theme of community, connection, um, and how if people, humans, intend to be great in the world, they cannot do that alone. And so I'm going to read from chapter 3, The Embrace of Community. Community is the spirit, the guiding light of the tribe, whereby people come together in order to fulfill a specific purpose, to help others fulfill their purpose, and to take care of one another. The goal of the community is to make sure that each member of the community is heard and is properly giving the gifts he or she has brought to this world. Without this giving, the community dies. And without the community, the individual is left without a place where he or she can contribute. The community is that grounding place where people come and share their gifts and receive from others. It goes on to say, when you don't have community, when you don't have connection, you are not listened to, you don't have a place you can go to and feel that you really belong. You don't have people to affirm who you are and to support you in bringing forward your gifts. This disempowers the psyche. I'm going to say that again. This disempowers the psyche, making you vulnerable to consumerism and all the things that come along with it. Also, it leaves many people who have wonderful contributions to make holding back their gifts, not knowing where to put them. And without the unloading of our gifts, we experience a blockage inside, which affects us spiritually, mentally, and physically in many different ways. We are left without a home to go to when we need to be seen. Part of the human experience is the need to be seen, the need to be heard, and to unleash your gifts in a place that feels safe. And so, if you have found yourself without community, and I'm not necessarily talking about the place where you live, I'm talking about friends, I'm talking about family who have a vested interest in your growth and in you being able to express your gifts freely. If you are without that, it is very difficult to stand in your power. It is very difficult to stand in your purpose without connection. And as I said earlier, for those of us who are severely independent and who have pretty much lived our lives that way, it can start in childhood. I know for me, because there were particular things going on in my household, even though it seemed like there were always people in our house, I know that I participated in isolating behavior at a very young age. I could go off and play by myself for hours and didn't feel the need to have other people around me. Doesn't mean that I didn't have friends. Doesn't mean that I couldn't find someone to play with. Doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy those things. But I recognize now that when I was a child, I engaged in isolating behavior when the things in my household were too much for me to understand, for me to process. I'd go find a tree and climb it, and I could sit in that tree for hours. Or I'd go in my room, close the door, turn on the radio or turn on the turntable and listen to music for hours. I didn't know then that that was a way for me to deal with some of the things that I wasn't able to process or understand in my childhood. And that behavior continued throughout my life. That when life was lifing, I'm going to go isolating. I'm going to go shut down. I'm going to disconnect instead of, as it says here, the human experience requires each of us to be seen and to be heard and to be affirmed. If no one is affirming you in those moments when you need to be affirmed, you either learn to do it yourself or you learn to do without. And many of us, I fear, have learned to do without. And so we don't know that we can ask for it, demand it, request it. We don't know that being in community, being in connection with people is necessary for our growth. It's necessary for us to see the true self. It's necessary. What are you attracted to? And is that part of your community? Or is it just something that you do by yourself? How many of us have hobbies that we do by ourselves? We don't really share with other people. I'm always amazed when people get together and do things like crochet or just read a book in a group. It's like, why do you need to be in a group to do that? And they're not even really talking all of the time. It's just they're communing, they're fellowshipping. And it's not just something that we do on Sundays at church, it is something that is necessary for our growth. Listen, you similar, and I'm starting to recognize how uncomfortable I have become with connection, with people wanting to spend time with me. I'm like, well, why would you want to spend time with me? Why am I questioning it? Because it is an activity that I have engaged in since I was a child. And so, because there are aspects of my life right now that are uncertain, that don't feel safe, that I'm not clear about, that old behavior is absolutely going to rise to the surface. So, you have every right, as we said last week, to reflect upon your behavior and call yourself out and say, wait a minute. If I want a different experience in my life, it requires me to be different, which requires me to reflect on things that I may have done in the past that I'm not doing now, or in some of the behaviors that I engage in, which I believe are safe for me to do, but might be contributing to me not feeling so well about myself. As it says, here in chapter 3, it is damaging to the psyche. Yikes on bikes. You will experience a blockage inside. So, for many of us who right now are living with a creative block, it could be because you don't have community, you don't have support. Nobody is seeing you, hearing you, squeezing on you, hugging on you, loving on you, affirming you. It disempowers the psyche when we are not flourishing in a community. And I know we are in the day and age where we believe that we are creating communities online. And I'm not saying we don't, because look at what we're doing right now. We have created community. That can't be your only source of community. Because by design, we need to engage with people. We need to touch people appropriately and with consent. Every time I say that, I have to say appropriately and with consent. I am also a massage therapist, so I know the value of human touch. And many of us have gotten to the place where we are uncomfortable with people touching us, holding our hands, touching our shoulder, giving us a hug. And if that is something that feels uncomfortable for you, then I would offer that you do some exploration, perhaps with some support as to why that is. The skin being the largest organ in our body is on purpose because the creator doesn't do anything by accident. Our skin having all of these receptors so that we can process information. You know, if your sight starts to go, if your hearing starts to go, if your taste buds fail you, your skin is still a viable option for you to process information, for you to feel love, for you to feel accepted. I have talked about my beloved and how when I'm in his presence, my nervous system just starts to relax. You know, we're at the point you don't even have to touch me, and I feel that. But if I had not allowed myself to connect with this human, I wouldn't have experienced that. I do feel that way around my children. I do feel that way around grandbaby girl. But when you are able to experience a particular feeling with different people in different situations, it does something for your body. It sends the message that you are safe in multiple places. How many of us can say that that is our reality right now? I know I feel safe at home. I know I might feel safe with three other people. How many of us can say, I feel safe in my body, in multiple places, and with multiple people? What an experience of freedom that is. Knowing that we live in a society, in the society that we live in, but you can feel at peace in multiple places and spaces and with multiple people. That requires a level of intimacy and connection that we may not be comfortable with. We think we're getting it because we're online and we're talking to people and people are agreeing with us. But who is in your day to day life? Who comes to your aid when you are feeling out of sorts? Because for many of us, when we start to feel out of sorts, that's when we isolate the most. And I am here to tell you that is when you need to get around some people in the greatest way ever. When you are feeling your worst, is when you need community more. I will say it again. When you are feeling your lowest, it's when you need community more. It's when you need connection. How many individuals have we lost because the connection wasn't there or they felt that the connection was too much of a burden? And I know I've had that experience too. Sometimes it feels whew, like work facilitating relationships with human beings or feeling as though you're not safe in particular places and spaces. It can take some time, particularly as we get older, to find your tribe, to find people that you feel comfortable with. I use the term spiritual friend. It can be a challenge to connect with people as we get older because when we're younger, it seems to just happen because we're in places and spaces at the same time. You look like somebody that I would hang with. You like the same thing I like, and now we're best of friends. As you get older, and we get set in our ways, and we tell ourselves, I don't need a lot of people. I don't need connection. I don't need to be in messiness. But we do. I say we need it more as we get older because there are less people around for us to engage with. I was having a conversation with my beloved yesterday about making arrangements. Like, what is the arrangement when we are no longer able to take care of ourselves? If that is not a conversation that we're having now, by the time it happens, it's too late. And we're left up to other people to make those decisions. But what if you've lived your life in isolation where you have not made those intimate connections? Who is going to support you when you may be unable to support yourself? I think that's one of the most powerless positions to be in when you may not be able to make decisions for yourself and there's no one who you have formed an intimate relationship with who could make those decisions. So now strangers are making decisions about your quality of life and your care. If we don't do anything else before this year is out, I think we need to take a piece of paper and write down, who am I connected with? Where are my intimate relationships? And when I say intimate, I don't just mean intimate and romantic. I mean, who knows me in an intimate way, so that if there was duct tape over my mouth and I needed to answer a question, that person could answer for me. How many people could I count on? How many people am I attached to? A lot of times we have these throwaway relationships where if people come up missing, it's like, well, we didn't really hang out that strongly. And I'm telling you, because it is my lived experience right now, there are relationships that I have not been facilitating, fostering, and cultivating. Friendships that mean a lot to me, but based upon my actions, you would know that they mean a lot to me. And that's something that I have to do. And it may be uncomfortable, right? That safety feeling is invaluable. And it can also be uncomfortable. Even people who may have seen us at our worst, to have those deep, meaningful conversations with them, you got to feel safe. You got to feel aligned. And that doesn't mean that they have to like everything that you like, but your spirit has to be aligned. Because the minute they do or say something that feels like it's not in alignment with who you know yourself to be, the shutdown is on. I have friends that I love very dearly, but their thoughts on particular subject matters, I start to shut down. Like, I can't have a conversation with so and so about this because it feels like it's going to be a thing. And we each have to decide. And I think it's part of that life experience that we all go through when we reflect on our lives, what it is that we've accomplished, who it is that we are becoming, and who am I surrounded with? Who is that person I know I can call at 2 a.m. and say, I got something to share, and you were the first person that popped into my mind. And if that person does not exist for you, then you have to be accountable and ask yourself, why? Have I been traumatized or damaged in relationships so much so that I don't consider intimate connection to be something that I need? Think about that. If there is a project that I want to create, is there someone I can share it with, or is it something I have to keep to myself because I don't want anybody to interfere, because maybe they don't understand the way my brain works, or maybe they haven't been supportive in the past? If you are challenged with making meaningful, intimate, let me, emphasize meaningful, because there are many of us that can make friends like that. Walk in a room with not knowing anyone, walk out of that room with knowing everyone. Um, I would say back in the 80s, 90s, the buzzword was networking, particularly if you were in business. Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many networking events that I've gone to in my life, and I cringe when I think about it, because every single time I went to a networking event, I was like, I hate doing this. This is not the way that I, form relationships. And it just felt forced, and you had to put a fake smile on, and you're like, hi, what do you do? Here's my business card, I'll take yours. And it just feels like a forced way to engage with people. And I'm trying to think that in all of the decades that I've been networking, have I ever really formed a long lasting relationship? I can't think of anyone that I've formed a long lasting relationship with in those forced experiences. Can't think of one. But what I do know is that connection, relationship, That's an action word. It takes focus, it takes intentionality. Maybe it didn't when we were younger, but now it does. If there are people in your life, you better be pouring into them, and hopefully they are pouring into you, because none of us can go through this life on our own. We shouldn't. You better not. Connection is one of the things that makes us who we are. I can say that I have been shaped and molded by some of the relationships that I've been in and the things that I have learned. And relationship is where we learn most about ourselves, what you tolerate, what you don't tolerate, what your boundaries look like, what they don't look like. All of those things are essential when you are talking about restoring your power. And the co part of connection has to be important. We are together, we are working together, just as it says in the spirit of intimacy. We are supporting each other. I can see your gifts, you can see mine, and we are supporting those gifts together. What a beautiful thing. Yesterday, with my beloved, we were talking about this very thing even before I shared with him that today I was going to be talking about connection. And, we went out on Friday. And I honestly, when Friday came, I was like, I don't want to go. I wasn't feeling well. I wasn't. I had just said to him, I'm not going to be spending money on going out because I'm focused and I'm blah, 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 all of that. And then I was like, okay, we're going out on Friday. And he was like, what? We're doing what? We're going out. I'm so glad we did, because I didn't even realize how much we needed that to disrupt this pattern that I think both of us had gotten in, when we're going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home. You got to disrupt that. If you want things to be different, a disruption of what is currently going on in your life has to happen. We think that these miraculous things are just going to fall down from the sky and change our life. And that is not the way things happen. Things happen through connection. And even when I was sitting outside this morning, and, part of my process is to be silent and to see what it is that I'm receiving. What messages am I receiving? That is the way in which I commune with spirit, by being silent. I recognize that the messages and the instruction that I receive may be done in isolation, but the miracle themselves happen in connection, because that is the way things have always happened. If we are to look at the stories from the Bible, there was always an individual who brought forth God's intended vision. There might have been a burning bush, but the burning bush was not the action. The action was, go out there and do what I said to do. Trust me and do what I said to do. And so connection has to be an action word in your vocabulary. It can't just be, I talk to some people online, or I talk to some people over here. It's like, what is the action? What is the inspiration? Because that's where true miraculous things happen. When we are connected, when we are in community, when we are working together, that's how things are created. You might have the idea in isolation. You might even create it by yourself, but until you put it out into the universe, put it out for it to connect with someone else, it's really not in doing what you intended for it to do. Allie says, trusted health advocates, you've also had a similar conversation and starting putting it to paper, so in the event is already taken care of while you are as well. Yeah, we have to. We have to plan now while our minds are well and healthy, and say, what do I want my future to look like? And I have to tell some people about it, because if I don't, it's going to be left up to other people to decide what my life looks like. good gracious, when I think about it, I don't want that to be my course of life, that somebody else is making decisions for me and they may not be aligned with the things that I desire for myself. But if I don't create the connections to make that so, and I have 3 children. If I don't tell my 3 children, if I don't tell my beloved, if I don't tell my brother, if I don't tell my friends exactly what I would like to have, if something happens to me, there's going to be a group of people disagreeing, everybody trying to be right, everyone trying to say, well, mommy would have wanted this. Oh no, my sister would have wanted this. Oh no, my wife would have wanted this. Unless I speak it in existence now and do so in my community, I can't be certain that the plan for my life is going to be executed in the way that I desire if I'm not able to speak up for myself. But that doesn't come unless we create intimate connections with people and have these kinds of conversations. Powerful things happen when we connect with one another. Powerful things can happen in isolation when you're by yourself. But when you bring other people into your vision, when you say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do. And I know, like you, I have seen countless of, advice. People say, don't tell nobody what you're doing. Work in silence, move in silence. And what can tend to happen when you do that is that there's no feedback. There's no feedback about your vision. There's no support. There's no, there might be lack of resources. It might be taking you longer to get this thing going because you're not having the interactions that would support you. And I trust every single one of us that we are at a point in our lives where we are learning how to discern those who are truly invested in our worth versus those who are invested in their worth in our lives. And if you are still having challenges with that, then give me a call, send me an email. I'm trusting that if we've made it this far in life, that we haven't made it this far without learning how to discern when someone is truly invested in our well-being. There are some clues. And if you have been creating community in your life, you have learned how to do that. One of the other things about living in isolation and that childhood experience that I talked about is that if you are not operating in community, then you don't learn how to operate in a community. And so, if you had an experience as a young person by being isolated and experiencing extreme loneliness, it could also be challenging for you to work in a community, for you to connect with other people because it's not something you learned how to do. I see it every day at the child care center where you have some children who want to play by themselves, don't want to share, don't care about other people's feelings, and you have to wonder outside of this preschool environment, what type of foundation is this child receiving in how to work and live and be social with other people? Or are they replicating the same experience that some of us has having as an adult? Going to work, come home, going to work, come home. So going to school, coming home, going to preschool, coming home, going to grandma's, coming home. So they're really not having the social opportunities. There is a lot of information out right now about the poor pandemic babies, those babies that were born in 2019, 2020, who are now entering kindergarten and preschool, and how the social skills are not, and the social emotional skills are not where they typically are for this group because it was disrupted by the pandemic. And so we have a group of individuals that we really have to work at creating social opportunities for them and connection, because that is how we learn how to be in the world. But if that's been disrupted for you, either by the pandemic or by some other childhood experience, maybe you moved a lot. I was listening to a podcast of a young woman who, as a child, she went to 17 different schools from the age of 5 to the age of 18. She went to 17 different schools. And that's almost like a new school every single. As a matter of fact, it's more than one school a year because she had the experience of her parents would live a place and then get kicked out, and they would have to find another place to live and another place to live and another place to live. And so she never had the stability of being in one place for a full year. And so she struggles with relationships because she didn't know how to form them. Because by the time she formed a relationship with somebody, it was off to the next place and off to the next place and off to the next place. And so, for those of us who are looking to ground ourselves, balance ourselves, place our feet in a more powerful position to show up as our true selves, you have to look at the way in which you interact with other beings. Are you interacting with other beings? Can you definitively say that you have a community? And if you did have a community and now you don't, then you have to be accountable and say, okay, what happened for me? What happened for me where I have disconnected from people, from places, from things? I said to Beloved the other day, I haven't volunteered in the way that I used to volunteer. I do a lot with Gift of Life. My nonprofit has not been operating and working in the community as it once did. I haven't been. I'm recognizing these things are missing. And if these things are missing, then certainly it is contributing to the experiences that I've been having of feeling alone, of feeling isolated. And that's on me to correct. Again, it's not something that's just going to fall down from the sky and then all things are going to be better. The behavior has to be different to experience something different. And so, for many of us, we might even be operating at extremes where we are not connected to anything at one extreme, and at the other extreme, we all over the place. We over here, we over there, we over there, we in this place, that place. We're in so many different places. We're not clear about what it is that we're doing. And that's at the extreme. Because if you're in everything all at once, how do you focus? How do you give each thing the time and the love it deserves if you're split in so many different places? I was watching a conversation about a particular celebrity who, for some reason, has chosen to intentionally have multiple children with multiple people. I'm just going to say that, and y'all probably know who I'm talking about. And the argument that they are a good parent. And it is not for me to say what a good parent is, but I have 3 children. And at any given point in time, I have 4 children, but 3 living children that lived with me. And I still felt like I didn't give each one of them the time that they deserved. I can't imagine if I had multiple children living in multiple different places, but at a similar age, how do you pour yourself into that many places and spaces at one time as one person? I don't care how much money you have and how much you can financially provide. As one human being, and for those of us who have all of our children under one roof, it's hard enough trying to pour yourself into the children, the partner, and then you might have other family members. That it's hard enough. I don't know how you do it when everyone is living in different places and their needs are different, because everyone's needs are different. How do you keep the intimate connection when you feel like you're being pulled in so many places. And so that's what I mean. At the extreme, there are many of us who are in so many different places. We are not fully pouring ourselves into any one thing appropriately. It is difficult to do it when everybody's under one roof. How do you do it when everyone is spread out and all over the place? Powerful things happen when we connect with one another, when we recognize I am being seen, I am being heard, I am being loved on, I am being supported. It does something to your brain. But if your brain is not used to it or knows how to receive it, it can take some time for you to become comfortable with it. It can take time for you to become comfortable with people loving on you. One of the things that is not just found in this book, but is certainly found in the Healing Wisdom of Africa, because it talks about finding your life purpose through nature, through ritual, and through community. And part of the indigenous way of being has always included community. When one is hurt, we are all hurt. When one is glad, we are all glad. When two are together and something is not right, the entire community comes together and say, we have to support this union. We don't have that. Most of the time when there are challenges, we have been taught deal with that on your own time. Go somewhere and, think about what's going on for you by yourself. And as I said last week, and I actually said in my therapy session, if the only voice that you are listening to is your own when things are not going well, it can be that much more challenging to be well. It's hard to flip the switch when the switch is flipped in one way. And the reason it's flipped in that way is because of your thoughts and your feelings. It's so difficult to move through that by yourself, which is another reason why connection is so important. I may receive my guidance, my wisdom, and my instruction in isolation, in silence by myself. But the true miracles happen when I am actively connected to other people. I have not always acknowledged that. I have not always recognized that. In these past couple of months, I've been telling myself I'm connected. But has it been a wide range and scope of connection? No. It's been a little, what felt safe. What has felt safe? Yes, ma'am. That co part is important. That unity part is important. It's challenging, but those of us who are independent, it's like this is how I've made it through. Yeah, when you surviving and you got to make it from day to day, you don't really have time to think about involving other people. You really are thinking about how am I going to get through this? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to make the best of it? That's the Western way of being. We initially think if there's a problem in my life, I have to figure it out. And we may even be thinking because I created it, because I'm embarrassed by it, because I've been here before, I have to figure it out. Instead of thinking, if there is a challenge, a problem in my life, I am going to need community to support me through it. So I don't think so bad about myself. And as I said earlier, I got a lot of good girlfriends. They may not know the intimate parts of my life because I don't share that. That's not what I was taught. Like you, many of you may have been taught you keep your secrets at home. We don't talk about stuff that goes on in this house Anyway, woo, you would get in trouble. If my mother even thought that I was going somewhere telling people what was going on inside our house, she would have a fit. Because for many of us, the appearance that everything is well was more important than everything actually being well. Because maybe if I had, as a young person, said to someone, I'm afraid to go home, maybe something could have happened. I don't know. And this isn't about recreating history, but it is about recreating the behavior that many of us grew up with. Being in isolation, not telling anybody when you have a problem, keeping secrets. I was relaying a story to my beloved about some people that I know that are married but have a secret. I know about the secret, and I know that one of the partners doesn't know about the secret. They may know about the secret now, but even as I was telling the story, I'm like, how do you say that you have an intimate relationship with your partner if you keep secrets? I do it. I had to confess that to beloved the other day. Like, I haven't told you everything. He like, I already know that. I already know you don't tell me everything. I already know that. And my prayer partner, God bless her, we're in conversation. And a magnificent coach said to her, well, if you're keeping secrets in your intimate relationships, are you keeping secrets in your relationship with God? And I wanted to hang the phone up on her immediately when she said that, because it hit me in my chest. If you keep secrets in your intimate relationships, are you keeping secrets from God? It's not as if the God of your understanding is not already aware of all things going on, but in your conversations with God, do you bring up things that are uncomfortable for you to bring up? Because your level of intimacy and how you are uncomfortable with being vulnerable and intimate is so deep and so profound that you won't even be intimate and vulnerable with God. Yikes on bikes. Let's start there. Let's start with our relationship with God, whom we are co creating with, who we are hopefully in community with. If you are in community with God, how are you withholding anything? And if you are in community with God, if you are in community with Spirit, why would you be challenged in your relationships with the people you love? Mm. My parents have passed on, but I know that there are conversations that we never had an opportunity to have because that wall was there. There are just certain things that you don't say, to your parents, and certain things that they may have wanted to ask you, but maybe didn't ask you because they either didn't want to know or didn't want you to ask them any follow up questions. I can think of so many conversations I would have loved to have had with my mother, but there was that wall of respect, that wall of we don't have those kind of conversations. You know what I'm talking about? We were talked at, not talked to. We don't talk about I'm feeling out of sorts. And certainly for my parents' generation, you don't say those things out loud because someone else might hear it, and it's going to be unsafe for you. And so I'm hoping that we are pulling those walls down so that I can go to my beloved and say, listen, there's something I need to share with you, because you know how heavy it is to carry a burden all by yourself. You know how it weighs on you. And then what it creates, just as it says here in the spirit of intimacy, it disrupts your psyche when you are holding on to secrets, when you are holding on to heaviness and burdens, and you don't have anyone to share that with. It disrupts your psyche. It disrupts your peace. It disrupts your ability to create. It disrupts your power. It weakens you. And so, what I offer for each and every single one of us is start with a piece of paper. How many, well, first define what intimacy means to you, and then write down how many intimate relationships do you believe that you have. And I don't mean, well, I'm close to my kids. I mean that if you opened your mouth and said to your children particular things, would they look at you like, what's wrong with mommy? What's wrong with daddy? Or would they say, tell me more? Because I have some things I want to share with you. We think we have intimate relationships with people, but yet we're all walking around with these secrets and these heavy burdens in our hearts, and we're not sharing them with anyone. Now, as a coach, I hear a lot. I have heard some stories that would curl the hair in your nose. And I'm often wondering and sometimes asking, who else knows this about you? Who else have you shared this with? And if the response is so and so doesn't know, I haven't, it could possibly be because that relationship is not as safe or as intimate as we really think it is. We're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of being criticized. We're afraid of feeling guilty. We're afraid of shame, embarrassment. All of those things are natural human emotions. They get in the way of connection. They get in the way of intimacy. They get in the way of vulnerability. And they get in the way of us being our true, authentic self. And if you are not living from a place of authenticity, baby, it's exhausting to pretend to be okay when you're not okay. Ask me how I know. It can further your illness, whether it be a mental illness, physical illness, spiritual illness, or emotional illness. It can further that illness when you are carrying burdens by yourself, when there is lack of community. And I mean true community, where people are seeing you and hearing you as you are, not how they need you to be. Because I will admit that if I think about my children and our relationship, they need me to be a particular way. They don't want to hear particular things about my life because they can't process that. We need mommy to just be mommy. And so I may not share particular things with them. But I would hope and pray that as we all mature, that we can begin to build the type of relationship that I can say what I need to say because it may be important, not just for my healing, but for their healing. I would hope as I continue in this relationship with my beloved that I am able to say what is in my heart because I know what it's going to do for our relationship. And as we are building community here in this space, I trust that as we share with one another, we recognize the power that it gives us to tell our story authentically, without hiding and without feeling like a sham, without feeling like we're faking the funk. Because at the end of my life, the last thing I want to do is use that energy to be making some bedside confessions. The last thing I want to do is pull out a list of like, okay, I'm ready to tell all of the secrets of my life that I wasn't able to share before. And now this is how I'm going out. I want, if I have any say so in the matter, if I'm taking my last breath, I hope they are, I love you. I'm grateful for you. I had a good time here. Please be well without me. I hope that's how I'm spending my time, not some, deathbed confession. I absolutely know it was passed down. Generational survival. We learned on this soil that we needed to be secretive about the things that we did and the things that we said because it could mean our death. That's in our DNA. We can't tell people what's going on with us because that could mean you're going to be sold, you're going to be experimented on. You thinking was a crime. The fact that having your own thoughts, having your own beliefs was a crime for Black people in this country. And in some ways, it still is. You had to think the way your owner thought. You had to worship the way your owner worshiped. You could not be creating thought. We weren't allowed to even process information through reading, through speaking. None of that. So, of course, it's in our DNA to be secretive about how we feel, what we're thinking about, what things are meaningful to us. But it is not going to aid in our healing. You cannot heal in secret. And many of us are trying to do that. I know I've tried to do that. It's like, I don't want nobody to know, you know, that I'm over here doing these things to, heal my mind and my body. I don't want anybody to know that I want to be well. I've got to tell people that I am well, that I am okay, even when I know I'm not. True connection will not even allow you to do that because the people who are truly connected to you are going to know before you even answer the question. They may not even ask, how are you? They may just start with, something ain't right. What's going on? I would hope that the people that I'm connected to, in the ways that I think I'm connected, and I do have some people that will call me out. Why I haven't heard from you? You over there isolating yourself? You seem to be removed, shut down. How come ain't nobody seen or heard from you? What's going on? I'm grateful for those people who call me out because they see behavior that is not the typical behavior. And when we went out on Friday, that was not typical behavior. And it seems like we go out all the time, but something had shifted where we got into this routine of go to work, come home. Maybe we'll see each other. Go to work, come home. Maybe we'll gather here. Go to work, come home. And complain, complain, complain. And for me, it was, I don't feel well, so I can't do this. I don't feel well, so I'm not going to plan to do anything else. And my therapist said something to me, during our session where I was just like, light bulb moment. You are absolutely right. I have to force myself to change this behavior because it's not going to happen any other way. And so I said this, these past couple of weeks, we were going to talk about action. How are you actively connecting outside of your own mind, your own feelings, your own behavior? How are you connecting to other people, other places? Connection is not just with people. Connection can be with a an experience. I recognize that there were experiences. I can tell you right now, I have got some dead plants in my house because I disconnected from taking care of my plants. Didn't have the energy, didn't feel like doing it. And I'm looking at these yellow leaves and I'm like, that's a daggone shame. I had plants, throughout my home and I just lost interest in taking care of them. So if you acknowledge that you have lost interest in connecting with people, with experiences, then I would offer to you, you got to disrupt that behavior. We have to do and engage in behavior that perhaps those before us didn't have the freedom to do so. We have to begin to get back to creating community, because that is what we come from. We are communal people. That is also in our DNA. And it's time for us to reconnect to that. It's time for us to explore what unity really, really looks like for you, and being mindful of when it is a true connection and not just you going through the motions because it looks like, sounds like what everybody else is doing. I can remember when one of my children was younger, and it seemed like she had a new best friend every 2 weeks. This is my friend. This is my friend. This is my best friend. This is my best friend. And I'm like, how are you really connecting to these people if they seem to change on a bi-weekly basis? Or is it just you seeking connection, but not really knowing how to do it, or who is really a safe space? Because as her mother, I could already tell. She'd be like, "This is my new friend," and I'd be like, "Yeah, she's not your friend. She's not your friend." So let us use our discernment in recognizing what true connection looks like. Where are you in terms of intimacy and vulnerability? How comfortable are you with it? Again, there are extremes. Some people have an extreme view of vulnerability and they just spilling now all their business out without a thought. I'm just going to tell everybody all my business, hoping that it gets me something. True, authentic connection also comes with discernment, where you will know what is a safe space, what is a place that feels like a container. So if I tell you we share in this moment, it's not something that you then broadcast to everyone because you just feel like, telling everybody other people's business. Powerful things happen when we connect with one another. And I'm telling you, powerful things happened when I received, those gifts in the mail, because I wasn't expecting it. And I wasn't expecting it to be so spot on with something that I love to do, which is journaling, which again speaks to my spirit and not necessarily something you provided just because you wanted to provide something. Again, I have, I'm learning to receive gifts from people. And it's not that I don't like to get gifts, it's not my love language. And so when I do receive it, I'm always thankful. But sometimes the gift is not really personal to me. It's not really something that I can use. For years, I tell people, please don't buy me anything for Christmas. I don't need another knick-knack, brick-brack. I don't have use for them. I don't really feel attached to them. But when people give me things that they know are meaningful to me and speak to my heart, that feels like a blessing. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I am learning how to reconnect with people, and that I even recognized it was missing, because I recognized that first I had to connect me with me. That is one of the most important connections that you can make with yourself. And how many of us have been so disconnected with ourselves that we ain't even got time to recognize we disconnected with other people. We don't even recognize that a lot of the activity that we engage in, we're doing so in isolation because we're not even connected with ourselves. And so today's meditation is a request that we first and foremost connect ourselves with ourselves so that we can connect with others. Because how can I connect with you if I don't know who I am? If I don't know what it's like to connect with me? And so as you are writing down the individuals that you have an intimate relationship with, I hope you put yourself at the top of the list. Don't leave yourself out. And then once you get your list, it's not to judge and say, I only have 3 people on this list, or I got 33. It's not to judge it, but it's to reflect on it. What makes those relationships intimate? What is it about those particular people that you love the most that makes your heart sing? What can you identify is not only a reflection of them, but a reflection of you? Because I love to see myself in other people. I love it when there are differences because I get a kick out of, human behavior and why people do some of the things that they do. But when I see myself in another, then it makes me recognize that I'm not alone in some of the crazy ways that I behave, that I am still growing, that I am connected to who I am. Therefore, I can recognize it in another being. And that the community that I am creating is not necessarily based upon my creation or the way or the way that I want things to be, but it is an acknowledgement that we are all so beautiful in who we are, that there are particular characteristics that I don't have to have because I see it in my brother, I see it in my sister, my spiritual brothers, my spiritual sisters. So it don't have to be me. I'm inspired by what others are doing. And so I don't always have to be the one to experience it. I can live vicariously through my spiritual friendships. Because if you are out here winning and living your best life, it makes me happy. It makes me feel better about my life and the life that we are all creating for ourselves. So, wherever you are, let's take some deep breaths. And if it feels comfortable for you to do so, take your hand, place it on your heart space, hold your own hand, whatever feels like connection to self for you. Because what we know is that we were not created in isolation. There was a whole lot of connection going on in our creation. And therefore, every facet of our life requires connection to be sustainable. And so let us breathe in, let us breathe out, recognizing that that in itself is one of the greatest spiritual connections that you will ever have, the breath. You are connected to all things as a living, breathing being. We are all breathing in and breathing out the same air. I love to have that thought that the air that I breathe and is recycled in my body is the same air that was recycled by the Christ himself. And if it's good enough for the Christ, it's good enough for me. So let me continue to breathe and connect to all things in the universe, all living things, giving off energy, receiving energy. And as we are breathing and recognizing the power in that action, let us all recognize the power in the action to say, I intend to connect with others outside of my reality. There's nothing like connecting with individuals who are living a different reality than yours. You learn so much about yourself, you learn so much about other people, and you recognize just how powerful each and every single one of us really, really is. When you hear someone else's story and how they were able to navigate life, I was listening to Mama Ia yesterday, and she said, think about every single thing that you have experienced that has brought you to this moment, and how we have all triumphed over so many different things, things that may have been designed to disrupt how we feel about ourselves. And I know for myself, there have been times when I have not felt agreeable with me. I've thought some very, very damaging and violent things about myself. And I know that there are times, this being one of them, when I have thought so highly of me, when I have been able to acknowledge just how great my mind is, how wise I am. And I recognize that is the same being, the being who may have been in her lowest of lows and also in the highest of highs, and all of who that is within me. And I won't disregard any of it. And I can even say that there is a measure of gratitude for it, for me to be able to see all of who I am and still want to connect with more of who I'm becoming. And as we breathe in and we breathe out, we have to recognize the connection that we have with the Creator, the God of your understanding, is so powerful. It keeps us here. When we think about the laws of gravity and how it pulls us to Earth's center, I also believe that the law of the universe allows our crown to be lifted on high. Imagine if we all were just bent over, looking down at the ground, feeling so lowly that we couldn't look each other in the eye. There is something within us that allows our spines to be erect, our heads to be high, that allows us to look in each other's eyes and connect and say, hey, I see the God in you, and I know you see the God in me. I don't think you would be able to look in my eyes if you didn't. There is something to be said about an energetic attraction to other beings. And sometimes we can't even explain it. Why do I keep finding myself attracted to particular people, but also tell myself I don't like people? Because there's something magnetic within each and every single one of us that to me has to be the recognition of God. When I look at children that I did not birth, when I look at women that are not my biological sisters, when I look at men who are not my biological brothers, and there is something within them that I find appealing, it has to be the energy of God. Because who would not want to connect with that? When I see a dog that's not mine, but I turn into jelly, there's got to be the recognition of God in the trees, in the sky. Who wouldn't want to connect with that? Who wouldn't want to connect with that in an intimate way that means I show up as I am, you do the same, and we are supportive. We are loving on one another. And love is not a dirty word. It is the most powerful agent that exists within the universe. So, how dare we connect and leave love out of the equation? I have to love you. You better love me. You have to love me. And I have to love myself. In order for me to love you, I got to love me. And I hope that you are doing the same. How can I consider myself to be a powerful being and I'm leaving love out? I'm leaving connection out. I'm leaving out the acknowledge of God in all beings, even those who I may not agree with. They may be the version of God that I need to see in order for me to figure out who I am. It's nothing like a challenger in your life that makes you rise to the occasion to figure out who you are. If you no longer want to be frustrated by another individual, then you better figure out who you are to allow that frustration to leave your body. And perhaps that challenging person is the version of God that you need to see to learn something. Can't do that without connection, without connecting to yourself, utilizing the tools that are available to all of us: vision, discernment, wisdom, and intelligence. All of those aspects and characteristics of God living within each and every single one of us, available for our use. Doesn't happen without connecting to yourself and to others. I can't dismiss you if I haven't acknowledged you. And so let me acknowledge all beings. Let me hear their story. Let me hear their pain. Let me hear their purpose. Let me hear what I need to hear in order for me to make an informed decision before I just paint everyone with the same brush and say, oh, you one of them, so I'm shut down. And you might be missing out on the opportunity to learn something amazing. You cannot heal, you cannot learn, you cannot grow in isolation. Community is necessary for your gifts to pour into the world and for the world to pour into you. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we disconnect because we think that is the safest thing for us to do. And there are times where we may need to turn down the volume on some of the connections that we have made so that we can receive instruction, messages, and wisdom. But once we do receive that information, what do we do with it? What's the action? What's the expression that comes after the instruction? Or are you just holding on to all that information and not acting upon what you've been instructed to do? I know I'm guilty of that. When God has been very, very clear, and I'm just sitting there acting like I didn't hear a thing, afraid to act, afraid to move, afraid of the risk, afraid, instead of saying, hey, there's absolutely no way that I would be given full instruction on what to do and also not been given the tools in which to do it. But when you are isolated, you may not hear that. So, ensuring that we are connected to individuals who are invested in our highest good is essential for us to show up as we are, as we were intended to be, in our full glory. It has to be part of your healing process. And it may look very different than the way it did in the past, but be open to connection, be open to community, be open, be open. Hey, my love, I'm so glad you did. As someone who is confessing that I am challenged with connecting with others, I also intend to learn more about why that is. I mean, I have some suspicions that, of course, it's rooted in childhood, not necessarily just trauma, but behavior. You know, as Natural Ally D said, some of it is learned behavior. We keep secrets in the house. We don't go out and tell our business to anyone. We pretend everything is okay. I don't know about y'all, but I know I've witnessed my parents, having a disagreement, and then someone comes over and it's like, hey, like nothing ever happened. And as a child, you're trying to process, were we not just having a moment and now everything is fine? Or it seemed to happen every holiday, particularly on Christmas, where something happened and then it leads to a big argument and then we act like nothing happened. Or it could just be the way some families are. It's a get together, somebody says something out of turn, now everybody want to fight and fuss, and then 10 minutes later everybody's back to being friends. But when you're a kid trying to process that, you're like, I don't know what it is, but I guess this is what we do. We pretend things don't happen. We pretend that everything is well. But what happens is you don't learn to connect. You don't always learn to develop the social emotional skills that are necessary for each and every single one of us. Because if we're all walking around pretending to be well when we know we are not, then we're not connecting authentically. It's a bunch of faking. And we can't afford to do that any longer because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And I think we owe it to previous generations and we owe it to generations to come to start living a more authentic way of being and connecting with one another. Start with yourself, make yourself a list. How many intimate relationships do I really have? How many people do I really consider to be my friend? And then take a look and see, is this okay with you? Is this okay with you? Because as I keep saying, powerful things happen when we connect with one another, support one another. And if I am allowed to read just one more thing from the spirit of intimacy, and I'm going back to the embrace of community. Mm, that one's a little bit too heavy. It may be hard for people who have lived all their life in the West, that would be most of us, to regard everything they own as belonging to the whole community. But this is the case in the village. As a result, each person in the village contributes to the well beings of others. When you have a child, for instance, it's not just your child, it's the child of the community. From birth onward, the mother is not the only one who is responsible for a child. Anybody else can feed and nurture the child. If another woman has a baby, she can breastfeed any child, and it's perfectly all right. What would it look like if we lived in a society where everyone embraced everyone? Hmm. Because most communities don't focus on spirit. They tend to leave spirit outside of the activity, which is a mistake. It's another way of saying we are in control, when in fact, a true community must be based on spirit. Oh my goodness. I was having a conversation the other day about control and listening to conversations about control. And I know for many of us, it has been the way in which we thought we remain safe. If I can control every aspect of my life, then I'm more likely to be safe. The reality is, we've been building walls around ourselves, walls around our hearts, and we're not any safer. But when you grow up in a energy of community, you recognize everyone has my best interest at heart. Now, for many of us, we're grown. We're not going to have that experience as a child, but it is something that we can create as an adult to say, I belong to a community that sees my gifts, that appreciates my gifts, that loves me for who I am. And it's reciprocated. Because I feel safe, I have no choice but to let my gifts flow freely. It's one of the reasons why I'm able to do this every Sunday, given the fact that I didn't want to do it at all in the beginning. But because it has been a safe space, it calls to me to show up. And I hope the same is true for you in your life. I hope that there is community in your life that in such a way allows you to be who you are, where you have no choice but to show up and show out, as we like to say, in your true self. And so I offer this week that if you don't believe that you have that, that you start to be more intentional about creating that. I will say, in the beginning, it's not going to feel safe because that's a whole lot of unlearning that we have to do, right? A whole lot of behavioral unlearning that we have to do. Because when we are hurt, when we are harmed, the natural instinct, unfortunately, is to isolate, to protect ourselves. I would offer that if you want something different, you got to disrupt that pattern and disrupt that behavior. So if you are feeling out of sorts, it becomes, I need my community because I know that there are people who are invested in my well being. And that's who I want to surround myself with so that I'm not only listening to the sound of my own voice that at this moment might not be well, might not be balanced, might be disconnected. And so if you have additional thoughts about this concept, send me an email. I'm still going through my emails. I'm still going through the connections that I have made. And as I said earlier, I confess to not always being comfortable with connection, not always respecting connection, and not always facilitating and cultivating connection. It's my intention to be better at that. It is work. It absolutely is work, but it's meaningful work. It's spiritual work. It is spiritual work. To create community, pour into someone other than yourself is spiritual work. I am grateful to have that type of spiritual work in my life. I am grateful that others trust me with that spiritual work, even when I'm not trusting myself. And I'm grateful for the individuals, the spiritual friends that I have made on this journey. And I continue to be amazed. Again, thank you, my sister. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely gifts. Let me show them one more time. These are journals that can only be found on Amazon. Let me go back up so everyone can see exactly where it can be found on Amazon under Deidre Bartley, her pen name. There are reasons for us to support each other. The main reason being love. So if you want to love on someone, then go on over to Amazon and look for Deidre Bartley and see what she has to offer. Hi, my love. How are you? My other love, how are you? I am so grateful for our time here. The topic for next week is also posted. Next week, we're going to talk about support. We have to talk about support because, again, and I hope y'all notice that there's a running theme that I know that I'm talking to severely independent people. You would not be here. I believe that like attracts like. And so I know that there are many of us out there with this severe independence. And so, yes, there is a running theme of connection, support, resources. All of those things have to come to the surface for so many of us who have been used to doing everything by ourselves. And we think that that's a powerful position to be in. This Western way of thinking will tell you got to do it on your own, and, self-made people. And that's a bunch of bull. And it has taken us away from indigenous practices of community, nature, and ritual. So let us get back to the business of being who we are, and that is a community. I love y'all. I love me. I love what we do here on Sunday. And my intention, I know you do, Erica. You don't have to tell me. I already know you do. I'm telling you, you would not be in this space if you did not. And a lot of that comes from your lived reality, your lived experience. Like, I got to do it by myself because either I didn't know any other way, I wasn't taught any other way, or I didn't believe another way existed. You ain't got to tell me, Erica, I know. And it goes for the rest of us, severe, independent people. Let people love on you, relinquish some control. And remember that you are always co-creating with the divine. So please don't act like we're any one of us are out here doing anything by ourselves when we are not. We are not. The universe is working with you, not against you. However, the universe wants you to relinquish some control and to trust, because that's what relinquishing control means. I trust that there are other entities, energies supporting me. And I don't have to do it all by myself. We are going to burn ourselves out if we think that we have to do it all by ourselves. We do not. I love you. I love me. Next week, we're going to talk about support. That might be a difficult conversation for some of us with this severe independence. Support? What is that? I don't even understand the definition of that word. We're going to talk about it next week. And then the following week, we're going to talk about acceptance. Accepting that we may be disrupting our own healing. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks. I love y'all. Think about the connections that you have, and think about the connections you intend to have, and the ones that may be on life support and need some energy, need some loving. I'm going to work on that right now. Again, happy Grandparents' Day to all of those moms and pop-ups out there. I am so in love with this role of being a grandparent. If it is possible for you to experience that, you don't have to have biological children or biological grandparents to be a grandparent. Trust me, there is a baby, there is a child out there for you to grandparent. If it is an experience that you desire to have, ask for it and see what shows up. I love y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see y'all next Sunday. Have a good one.